Okay guys, so it may be a bit difficult for you to work on the struts assignment because obviously slowly and slowly the topics become heavy. So let me go through what I have in my local, okay, and then we'll see. Okay, so I'll give you a brief overview on the assignment which was there, how to use it, like how to configure it, how to start using struts, and then we'll move on to this particular topic, the next topic. Okay, so let me go to the workplace and do a close all. So what I have done was that, remember the earlier project which we did, registration. Now I've copied it. I started using registration hyphen struts. Okay, so everything, all the classes, if you see JDBC connectivity, registration action, registration service, are all the same. Okay, not much changes. So let me like show you the overall project architecture as such, and I think this should be on, right? Okay, yes. So if you guys are not able to follow me at any point of time, do let me know. Okay, so if you see this again, you have this folder which is there, and this is just a kind of like local directory, but the same thing is represented in the form of a source folder in case of Eclipse, and that is how it is here, src main java. So whenever you create a project, this folder should be there. Okay, so let me show you, and I think you guys must be knowing, but just to give a reference, like say if I do create a new project, right, and then I go and search for, inside this I go and search for something else, like say new project, and then go to the next one and see, no, something is wrong here, then go search for web, I guess. Yes, come here, search for a new project, web, select dynamic, now you move ahead. Okay, and since I'm just treating it like this, just mention it as test and move forward. Alright, now see this test project. So here we only have a folder called src. Generally it is named as src main java. So what I generally do is I'll go do a right click, new, and then if you go here, there will be pack source folder. So that is how I go, mentioned as src slash main slash java. Essentially not. No, just let me delete it. Doing that, it is not creating. Something is wrong. Okay, let me try creating it again, because in the first place we'll delete it. here only we'll modify it. Now it's asking about the next step is, since it is a dynamic web project, it's asking about the where your all is what is the context root will you using, which basically means that if I hit using http localhost colon 8080 slash test1, okay, so if I use that one, then what is it is, if I want to use using test1 or test2 or something else. So if you use something else, I mean context root is, I mean, it's not always the project folder as such. So here when we use Tomcat, it uses the project folder, but ideally what we can do is that we can give any context root in the web.xml and we can start using that. So that's what it's asking, so that when it's creating the web.xml, it will create it accordingly. Okay. And let's mention it anything else. Then click on submit. Now my idea is to show you the structure of a typical uh, web application, right? So let's see. src main java is there. This is a source folder. If you want to create another source folder, and you can, again you go to the new, click on source src slash main slash resources. So this also you can do. Okay, you click on finish. So what happens is that all the class files you can put here. Okay, I mean sorry, all the Java files which has to be compiled into class files you can put here, and any configuration which is required, like say XML files or property file or text file, which obviously is not a Java file but is required for your running of your application, and it should not be external to the application. So if you have the requirements, you can put it here. Okay. Now see, this web content is a folder where all the web application related stuff is there. You have one meta in folder, which is manifest.mf. Then you have a web in folder, and web in folder the basic requirement is that there will be lib. Okay. So all the related class path, all the related jars have to be there in the lib. Okay. And if you want to have JSPs, you can create inside this, or you can create one step above. Okay, it depends. Okay, if you create inside webin, I mean directly if you hit right, like say localhost colon 8080 slash let's see slash registration, I mean or slash registration.jsp, and that JSP page is within webin, you'll not be able to access it, because things within a webin folder can't be accessed directly from outside. So that's the catch. Okay, so this is, by the way, a typical web application structure. All right, this is a typical web application structure. So if there are any dependent jars, it has to go in this particular folder. That's how it is. So see, what I have done here is that registration struts, if you see when I copied it, you have an src main java, you have an src main resources, again there you have web content, inside that you have webin, inside webin you have lib. So this is, like, you can say, a basic structure of a typical web application project which Eclipse creates for you. Alright. So if you remember in previous classes, what is the very basic thing which is required for this one, for a web application? The very basic thing is the webin folder has to be there, a lib folder has to be there, and you need to have web.xml. So these three are the basic requirements. All right, rest everything, I mean it adjusts itself. I mean, you can give a new source folder name and blah blah blah, it doesn't matter much. Okay, it's all related to class path settings and everything. So even if you have some other folders as I mean as source folders, that's not going to bother you that much. and you can work your way around it. So this is how a typical Struts application or web application looks like. Now let's go one by one into all the things which we have changed. Okay. Now this is a web.xml file, and for struts what changes, and everything is from the uh, struts first class which we have, and nothing is outside of it. So whenever you see some references here, let's try to correlate between those two. You'll see that everything was covered from there itself. So remember, we in struts 2 we use filters. Okay, so here also we are using a filter. The name is struts 2. Filter class we have given struts prepare and execute filter. This is the one which is given by Apache struts itself. We do not have to go ahead and modify and put our own. This is a way to like uh, you can say introduce struts in a web application. So in a typical web application, we have web.xml and we have servlets, right? But here, since we want to introduce struts feature, we have to introduce it as a filter, and that's how struts framework gets plugged in into this entire system. So similarly, if you once we go ahead and start working on Spring, in one way or the other, in web.xml, Spring will be introduced, so that in that way the Spring framework is plugged in into the entire web application. Okay, so here we are using this particular filter part, and this says that for any URL, for any URL pattern, struts2 will be the filter. Okay, this is the only thing which is there in the web.xml. After that, if you remember clearly, the second thing which we discussed, and again it was very important, was struts.xml file. That is the one which is important. The second thing which is important with struts.xml is that it has to be there in the class path. Okay, so if you keep it inside webin folder along with web.xml, it might not be visible. So the directive is very clear. I have read it somewhere as well, that it has to be within web-inf/classes folder. So whenever you put anything out here, and you for me the build is automatically checked. I don't know for you how it is, but you can manually build or you can keep it checked. So if that is the case, the classes get automatically compiled, and dot class files will be saved somewhere, right? So that somewhere is webin/classes. So if you go in the source folder, in the sense that you go in your local directory wherever you have a workspace, and see how the entire project structure spans out, you will see that you have classes folder here as well, and there you will be having all these classes, whatever you are writing. Okay, so let me show you. Actually, since it's what do you say, Eclipse project's not showing, but ideally when you export it as a war inside Webin, you need to have this classes folder where all the classes would be there. This I think maybe doing it in some other folder. Let me show you here. Properties, if you go and search for that job build path and click on source, you'll find one target here. See, they have ideally that is Webin. Inside Webin you need to have classes. If you export this particular thing as a war, that's how it has to come. But here if you see, they are putting it in this particular location, so all the classes you can find there. And so it's Eclipse configuration will work fine, but I think in the same project if you export somewhere else, that's going to cause problems for you. So you might have to change that thing if you want to do, but let's see. Anyway, so see here, inside build we have classes and we have strut, this particular stuff. Okay, now all the classes. The idea was that struts.xml has to be there in the class path, right? This is what we told earlier. So class path means that it should be available, like as all the classes are available. So this is what we have done. So here we have all the classes, and at the same place we have the struts.xml. Why we have so? Because I have put it inside src main resources. Okay, so that all the resources file has to be here, so it's available in the same location. If it is not available, you will start getting the same exception which Shala was getting. Okay, and she's there to resolve it, but that is the root cause of it. If it is not visible, you will get those errors. So I think you can see this. If you see, there is no action mapped for action name login. So this comes when, even though if you have struts.xml, it is somehow not available in the class bar. So this thing ideally should work for you. If it doesn't work, try creating a separate src main resources folder and let's work on it, which I have shown here. Okay. Now let's go back to this one. So we have this struts.xml. So let's see the contents of it. Okay. Now if you see the contents and if you remember the discussion which we had, there is nothing more in this struts.xml file. It is a very small file. So inside struts, you have package name. So this is basically for modularization. Namespace is /work, which is basically a sort of saying that if we have say localhost colon 8080 /test /work. So /work is kind of a sub context, right? So, that thing will be configured here. So if that thing comes, what is the action class which has to take care of it? That will be configured here. So once it comes here, and that particular JSP page has different action names, right? And that we'll see how it is configured. If a different action names comes, we need to take it up from here. So in our case, action name is welcome, and we have not given any class name here. Okay, but in this case, in the action name is save data, we have given the class name, right? So if we do not give the class name, it's not that there is no class. It's just that there is one default class which is used, and that default class is, if you remember, I think we discussed about it, it's called as action support. Okay, so what it generally does, it will just forward the request. If you do not override it, it's just going to forward the request to your result. Okay, now again, if you see, and these things are not important, like whatever I'm saying right now, it's not important with respect to doing the assignment. This thing was very much clear. Now let's come back to the next one. So if you see here the result, in one case you have name as success, in the second one name as failure. If you do not give anything here, it essentially means it is same as this. So it is like this if you do not give any name here. So by default the name is success. Okay, and if you remember, this name thing is used by the action class. In the action class, if you have execute, there when you have to return a string, and that string is basically the name of the result. Okay, and it corresponds to a particular JSP file or whatever. It can be some other things also. For now, just for simplicity, let's call it as, it will forward the request to the view, appropriate view. Okay, now this is the second thing, and again it was discussed in the class, I think last time as well. Nothing outside what was discussed. Now these classes, what was out here, it's the same as what we discussed in the mini invasive project, no changes. Okay, so this is the only struct, and this is a failure, registration JSP, and success JSP. So let me open registration JSP. So success JSP, anyway, it was static, I have not changed it. Failure JSP also I have not changed it. Registration JSP, I have given this form action. Okay, so S colon form action as save data, the first name, last name, username, and password. I'm using some of the struts tags. Okay, it is not required to use, but since I was working on it, and our next class, it was ideally today's class, whatever is out there is related to struts tag, I've used it. So S colon form action, this action will be same as what is configured here. Okay, so once like say registration.jsp is rendered and you click on submit, then since the action is save data and control goes to your server code, then from web.xml this filter comes into picture, and this tries to look into struts.xml and tries to find out that for action as save data what needs to be done, and then it figures out that registration action is the one which has to come into picture. Then registration action, we open it. Okay, registration action does its work. All right, and once registration action does its work, moves forward. So if you see execute is there, we return a particular result value, a particular string. So if your everything is fine, you're able to save data, it returns the string as success. If not, it returns the default value which I have configured above, which is failure. Alright. So the success and failure part is there. Once it returns, then we come here. If it is success, we render success.jsp. If it is failure, we render failure.jsp. Success.jsp and failure.jsp are static JSPs. There is no dynamic content there, so that's why like if you want I can open it, but there is nothing else to see. And the registration.jsp, if you can see, I mean the only way to plug struts it, that there is one tag library we have defined, and this tag library concept we have already discussed in JSP. For struts there is a specific tag, alright, which is required, and that's why we have included it like this. And then there's for different fields we are using different tags in the submit. Alright, now let me, there's one more thing which I want to look into, but before that let's go and see the results as well. Okay, so we go and see here, and see here, like this is how it will come. So localhost colon 8080 slash registration slash work. So slash work was a namespace, and then after that whatever action you need to render, you can directly invoke that as well. So the first of all, to get the first page, I have configured it using welcome, right? So if I come here, we have welcome. So for getting this registration page, I invoke slash welcome dot action. Okay, so dot action by default would be there because that's how it is there for struts, struts 2. Slash welcome dot action, you get this page, you enter your details, you click on submit. Okay, and that's when, I mean if everything is fine, you will get this user details registration insertion success. Okay, so that is what is out there uh, for this particular assignment. Now coming back to what extra thing is required. So the extra thing which is required, and that is pretty much intuitive, is about this webinf lib folder. So the thing is that all the necessary jars has to be there. So I started with one jar, which is struts2 core 2.1.8.jar. Okay, so I started with this particular jar. I think this is the latest one, or at least whatever the case, this worked for me. So I took this particular jar. Once you take it and try to build your application, I mean the thing is that all these jars, I mean in one way or the other, they require some other jars as well. So once you try to deploy it, you'll get no class definition found error. You take that class name with a space, I mean like say jar, and try to search it on internet. So the thing is that way you will get which particular jar file has that particular class, and then if it is available in a repository, you can download it and start using it. So there are other build concepts as well, such as Maven, which like helps you not to do that. But anyways, I mean we might discuss it later. I haven't seen my class schedule to see that it is there or not. But you can do a reading on Maven to understand how it works. Okay, so this is how you will find out. Like say space jar, and if you try to search, you'll see here it is out there. Go ahead and download it. So similarly, once you download, you start working on it, you'll get some error or the other. So that's how I found all these jars. Like all these jars are dependent. So again, you have to find them, add them. Okay. In my case, I mean, and one thing to mention is try to take the latest one. Sometimes there are class mismatches. Okay, in the sense that there was in an earlier version of the jar, there is a class which had a particular method. Okay, later on it was removed, or it can happen vice versa as well. So there is a method which was not there in the previous version, but it is there in the latest version, and if you try to execute it from the program, it will give you error such as no such method found, and that basically means that you have some version mismatch from the jars. In that case, you can go ahead, try to download the latest jars, see whether that particular method is present there or not, and then take it forward. But anyways, the other things which I'm telling you to debug if you're land into problems, that is whatever I'm saying right now is not part of the solution. Okay, so one by one you'll get all the jars which are at the minimum necessary. And once you've done this much, I mean it's done. Nothing else is required. So if you just have to go and run it as a server, and this should work fine for you. That's it. Now the thing is that uh, yes, one more thing: registration action. So go to registration action. See, if you remember struts, whatever I taught in the first class, I mean the data can be here only, like whatever is the first name, last name, etc., etc. And this is username, password. This is how I have defined it here. Okay. The only method is execute, which is important to be there, and I put it here. Okay, so again, I mean if you remember in the action class which was there in the mini MVC project, we just had this particular do post method, and from there we were just getting all these from things from the request. Here we do not need to get it from the request. I mean that part is already taken care of by the struts framework. It is being set in all these attributes which are defined, which are defined inside the action class, and this work is taken care of with struts, so you need not spend time doing it, because again, I mean it requires conversion into integer, string, boolean, etc., etc. It's going to cause problems for you, right? I mean extra work without any extra benefit. So that's how you go here. You get this registration view. You set the details which is required to be set in this registration view, and then give this registration view to service, and it is in the same way which we dealt earlier. And if it is success, then you set the result value as success, and if not, it is already set above as result value as failure. Okay, and then you return this particular result value. So if you return this particular result value, there is a particular, I mean if you go here, there is success and failure. There are different JSP associated, that JSP will be rendered. So this is how this action, I mean this particular assignment works. And if you see from your previous MVC project assignment, there are not much changes. The changes which are there are exactly same as whatever is there in your uh, in your last class tutorial. So there is nothing out of it. You actually have to create once and give it a shot. So if you try to do assignments, you'll get the hang of it. I mean it's exact. I mean if you find some errors, if you try to see those PDFs, those videos again, you'll get a hang of it. Okay, so try doing it, even if at first you think that the assignments are a bit overwhelming. Try doing it, because I mean nothing is overwhelming. I mean you'll one day you'll get hang of everything whatever is around, right? So give it a shot always. But anyways, let me come back to this particular assignment and ask you if you guys understood what I was doing here, or if you have any questions.
Hi Abhishek, can you show the registration JSP please?
Yes. Yeah.
So how exactly I mean, you're getting the data from the JSP to the registration action?
Hmm. See, uh, what we did earlier in uh, the case of servlets. So in the case of servlets, you have two methods, right? You have do get, do post.
Yeah,
Inside do get and do post, you have HTTP servlet request object, and you have HTTP servlet response object. So in the request object, you have all the attributes set from with the values whatever is coming from the JSP, right? Now this
yeah,
is how it is there in the case of servlets. Now all these frameworks are an abstraction over the existing servlet framework itself. Okay, so underlying concept has not changed. Even today, it's the same stuff, which was there like say 10 years back. The only thing is that the way in which we develop has changed a bit. So what Struts framework does is that if you see here, we have put this filter here, right? So we have, sorry, here in web.xml we've defined a filter. So what this does is that every request, is passing through this filter, and this filter has a code to invoke struts.xml. So this filter basically gets the know-how of the HTTP servlet request object. So once it gets a know-how, it knows that this is a particular action class. Like say in case of welcome.action, this registration JSP has to be rendered. In case of save data, this particular action class has to be invoked. Okay. So if it knows that this is a particular action class, and you go and come here, then whatever is the attribute from the request, it tries to use the reflection API, I guess. It is one of the APIs provided by Java, and tries to match by the name. Like if on the JSP you have first name, then what is the attribute here with the name of first name? Similarly for others. So if you have last name here, what is there on the action class with last name? Same with username and password. So this is how it matches. It sets all the values, and after that it invokes the execute method of registration action. Okay, so that's how the registration action or any action class which you write has all the model data uploaded, like set beforehand itself. Okay, so that's how the data is being passed from the JSP to the controller, or to this particular action class. Is it clear to you?
Yeah. Thank you.
And Suhas, yes, the name, I think I mentioned it, but maybe like not today. The name has to be struts.xml. It can't be anything different, because internally they look for struts.xml only. So the name has to be struts.xml. Any other questions, guys? So this is what was our last class assignment, and plus a bit of today's class assignment as well, because today, for today's class assignment was to work on the registration.jsp and start using all the tags. So maybe if you have not worked after today's class, you can try using struts tags, which I have done here, and do and see whether you are able to complete the work or not. Anyways, I'll send you the source code, but just want to make sure that everyone has understood it, because I received inputs only from a few folks. I think it was Aarti who was speaking. I got inputs from Suhas. But Marker, did you understand what we were talking about here? Okay. So Suhas, you already have a working version. Okay, good. Okay, fine, Raghav. What would others? Reena, did you understand? Shara, will this help you in resolving the issues which you are facing? Okay. So guys, if you have any questions, do speak up. You can stop me also in between. Let me save this video as a separate one, and then we'll go forward.